The two leaders of Nigeria's National Assembly have expressed concern about the perception of the outgoing legislature as a rubber stamp for executive decisions and actions. Now, Senate President Ahmad Lawan and Femi Gbajabiamila, who is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, says it is an unfair tag given the accomplishments of the federal legislature in the past 7.5 years. Meanwhile, many analysts have countered the Senate President's complaints simply for saying at the outset of the current dispensation that the Senate would pass every single bill sent to it by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, Arise analyst Dayo Sobowale joins us now to look at the protestations of Mr. Lawan and, of course, Gbajabiamila. It's good to have you. Mr. Dayo,
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Now, the impression, of course, has been created in some quarters that the presidency at the time had hatched and executed the election of its preferred candidates to emasculate and pocket the legislature. We're talking about, the 9th National Assembly and the fact that they're being constantly referred to as a rubber stamp. Do you think that this is an unfair summation of their 7.5+ years in we're talking about the House of Senate and the House of Reps?
To a large extent, I think so. Rubber stamp is a pejorative term. But the essence of the presidential system and the checks and balances, a separation of powers, is not to make each arm of government at each other's throat. It's to be a check on excessive use of power and abuse or misuse of power. I would prefer the situation we had in the 9th Assembly up to a stage because the APC was in control but not as much as it is going to be in the 10th Assembly, which I don't want to envisage. But let's look at what passed in the last Assembly, except on one occasion. They passed several bills, the decentralized ownership of electricity companies, the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity. They did several. They decentralized railway ownership. Those are the things they did. But you see, when people talk of rubber stamping, there was one thing they never rubber stamped. That's the budget approval. Do you get me? They actually, the legislature, the National Assembly, is the spending authority. So when the executive brings the budget, instead of pruning it down, like they are trying to do in the US, where the debt ceiling, you have the House saying that the president must curtail his expenditure, or they will not allow government to pay, which means government will default, which is unthinkable, which is not up to October. But in our own extraordinary Nigerian situation, when the budget comes, instead of pruning it, they pad it. They have their own constituents, expenditure, allowances, and so. And they be holding the executive to ransom since Obasanjo. I don't think any president has been as stubborn as Obasanjo. But they went to the extent that, they almost made this administration penniless because you don't have money. So invariably, that is what we should look at instead of saying they are rubber stamp. If they are rubber stamping good projects, good bills, things that will benefit Nigerians, you get me? Like make with this insecurity thing. If they come in now and they all put heads together and agree that we have state police instead of people killing our people all over. We have state police. We decentralize ownership of resources. There are many states with minerals other than oil. But all these things are accrued to the center, to the federal government. If you can decentralize that, if they can do that, even in the hurry, I will frown at I will frown at anybody calling them rubber stamp because they are doing public duty.
Okay, public duty, Mr. Sobowale, but would you say over time their activities has been largely self-serving on account of the padding scenario you've just enumerated as well?
Of course. That is fiscal rascality and irresponsibility. You see, the executive, you have to prune the system of checks and balances places the authority on spending with the legislature. Okay, see, towards the end of this administration, you'll be reading the dailies, you see the expenditure. Some of them, expenditure, borrowings, as far projected to 2050 and so on. It's reckless, that's fiscal irresponsibility. Fiscal irresponsibility.
But
So you can't call them.
But they have a duty to curb it at that point in time. They have a duty to curb it at that point in time.
Yes, they never did.
But they never did.
They never did. So, that is not even rubber stamping alone now. That's colluding in a wasteful spending. That's fiscal recklessness.
Some would argue that unlike the presiding officers in the 8th National Assembly who emerged independently, that some were quick to surmise that the massive presidential support that Lawan and Gbajabiamila received would come at a colossal cost. But are we not almost seeing the same thing here, where it's almost as if, Godswill Akpabio and his second, Abbas, who has been picked for speaker, aren't we seeing a repetition of what happened at the 9th National Assembly?
Confirmed. They have not been confirmed. Get me now?
But their names have been put forward.
About the constitution, the power play, the representation of parties in the National Assembly has changed immensely. There's a third force now, the Labour Party.
Yes.
Get me? And the way I see the Labour Party will neither agree with the PDP nor agree with the APC. So if you call that robustness, I don't mind. But if it can be a good check on the misuse of power, I would love it. But not at the cost that public-spirited, beneficial projects that that enhance the welfare of our people are not passed. Just don't check the executive just for the sake of it, as they are doing in America now, ideologically. You remember, in the US, they refused to confirm a judge. They said the election was due. But in the next time when Trump came in and they were in the majority, they confirmed 3 judges before, during the election time. And that's misuse of power.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was going to ask about how, this train of thought affects the performance of the federal legislature, at the backdrop of all of this, because we're talking about the separation of powers here. So if we've, there have been certain cases where we've seen this relationship abused, how confident are you that we're going to be able to move away from that with this incoming?
Don't misunderstand me. I am not condemning the rubber stamp syndrome per se. If the government is not for institutions of the presidential system to be at each other's throat, is to check excesses. You get me? But essentially, they should cooperate in getting bills that are beneficial to the public, getting bills based on the manifestos they wrote to people and which they endorsed and voted them in. Yes, that is the essence of government. Government is not a combat situation.
Okay, you can disagree to agree at some times. Very good, Mr. Sobowale. Now, looking still at the leadership of both the houses of the 9th Assembly, would you say their tenure is currently fueling coalition efforts from the opposition and newly elected members to take the lead at the 10th Assembly, as it were? I remember about 2 weeks ago, you talked about the issue of power grabbing and all that, and we're seeing that coming into play.
I once spoke about it yesterday.
Yesterday.
And I asked my questioners, my interrogators, like you, not to dump the gun. You get me now? Not to dump the gun. You see, incidentally, as I said, it's not jump the gun, but almost an hour or 4 hours after we left, they made the zoning arrangement based on the Muslim ticket reckoning. But then you have had reactions of people, threatening blue murder. They will do so many things in the house. So it's when they get to the house, and like I said yesterday, the party must put down his feet. That this is the decision. You play ball or you face the consequences. Said it should be a carrot and stick situation. Play ball, this is what you get. If you don't, but if they can't do that, the Labour can team up with PDP and the other fringe parties and make life difficult in terms of legislative functions or the relationship, the separation of powers between the executive and the legislature.
Finally, do you think Nigerians over time have benefited from their efforts, from the leadership perspective at both houses, especially with the APC leadership, as it were?
See, I just finished watching the Question Time in the British House of Commons. See, and my impression will answer your question. Is that if you are stuck to that parliamentary democracy, you will not be in the mess you are in today. But the military came in, wanted more power at the center, given that they are a hierarchical institution, and made the entire country a federation. They turned it into a unitary system of government where all states go and cap in hand to go and beg for money at Asoro. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, indeed.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Sobowale. It's always amazing having you here, and of course, your very brilliant analysis.